the guy before had abundance of everything.
Yeah.
And the way he's speaking is now he's speaking to people that are worrying about maybe where their next meal is coming from, right? Or what they're going to wear.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting
Yeah.
that he's covering both ends of the spectrum in these two parables.
I think it shows that there's like a worry on both like sides of the story, where it's like when you don't rely on God and you have an abundance, yet you still worry, and then when you have nothing and you still worry but don't rely on God, it's like you get nothing out of it.
I think that's going to be the point of where we're going with this passage, is what Jesus's advice is to both ends of the spectrum as to how we should approach living life. I think that's very insightful, Lauren.
I like that 32 though. It says, "Do not be afraid, little flock." So even the least, that God has a plan for you. I like that one. That's what I would say to my kids, little flock.
One of the things that I really like is as we kind of talked about, we're on the other spectrum, is that he kind of points out that the birds don't know where their next meal is coming from, but yet they get fed. And I think that is such a critical thing, is that people worry about those things and they don't rely upon the Lord. And it's easy to sit here and say that. We watch what's happening this week. I still can't figure out why people think that we're going to run out of toilet paper, but it's all gone.
It's been a self-fulfilling prophecy of all of the things. It's toilet paper.
Yeah, I mean, out of all the things that China's going to stop producing, that's it. So, anyways, but yet we create that little bit of a fear, and everybody's gone and bought that now. And and that's the interesting thing about all of this is that's a different type of selfishness, but yet we've all kind of fallen prey to that this week.
Yeah, I have to admit. So Sunday night I flew with Megan back to Lincoln to drive her home because college is not online now, right? And we stayed in a hotel Sunday night in Lincoln before heading out Monday morning.
You stole toilet paper?
You stole toilet paper, dang!
Well, I didn't. Okay, first of all, I didn't steal. This was in my room. Okay. And so this particular our bathroom, you had the toilet paper roll, and then it was one of those ones where tucked into where the roll is it's inset enough where a whole full roll, still wrapped in its packaging, was stored. I paid for that, just like I take those little bottles of shampoo and conditioner. I stuffed them in my they're there for you. I left the half roll so that, they didn't have to replace the half roll. I just took the whole full roll because I couldn't find rolls anywhere else. So every time we stopped for gas, I was going to these convenience stores and looking. We did find one. We hit the jackpot one time. They had 4 quadruple roll packages. So Megan's like, "Dad, do you want me to buy all 4?" I said, "Nah." I said, "Just get 3. Okay, let's leave 1 for somebody else." Oh, I shouldn't say that. Now I'm going to be like this rich man hoarding up toilet paper.
You're gonna have to build
that
a
I'm not
bigger
going to need
barn
that I'm not going to need when I die and go to heaven. All right. So I was going to ask you guys 3 things Jesus told his people not to do in this section. Did you catch that? What are the 3 things he said don't do? See if you can find them.
One is simple is don't worry.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Right? Do not worry about your life.
Yeah.
And what's it? The other thing is I love the talk about beauty in here, about look at the lilies and how they grow, and that even Solomon in his most spectacular clothes was not as beautiful as that.
Right.
And I think that's pointing to, at the simplest level, that God made us beautiful, each individual, each flower, each thing with its own unique beauty. And we work so hard to be like Dave or somebody else.
You shouldn't be.
Thing.
No, it's not me. Trust me, they don't look to be like me.
Dave.
When it comes to fashion, I'm a fashion disaster.
No,
they don't look to be like me, I can tell you.
Oh,
Some
Lord, what do you think about
some of your
that?
good characteristics is my point.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like somebody plays the piano well. Man, I really wish I could do that. That's the way people might think. They look past what God has given them
Has blessed them with.
Exactly.
I got you. Yeah, I tried to be drippy, didn't I, once upon a time?
Yeah, trippy.
Yeah, whatever that was.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the one thing he says, don't worry. What else does he say, do not?
Do not be afraid. Yeah.
Do not be afraid.
little flock.
Do not be afraid. Let me ask you this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is no worry whatsoever and 10 is press the DEFCON 4 panic button, where would you say you all are in our current environment? Where are you at, Lauren, on a 1 to 10 scale with fear?
1. I'm not really, I mean, it's like, I'm not really worried. I mean, I know it's like bad in certain areas, but like I haven't seen it firsthand, so I'm not like, I don't feel as like impacted about what's going on unless like I see with my own 2 eyes.
0
Well,
1.
You've actually said this week, you're like going, nobody that you
I
really,
really know.
Yeah.
Yeah, has been impacted by this. So
So
it
she
wasn't
goes, it's not as real to her.
as it is for other people who are going through this.
So I don't think I'm afraid for myself, but my mom, I mean, I really am afraid for my mom. And
I thought about your mom actually
Yeah.
when I was thinking about
I mean, it's real.
who are the
She's not
fragile
going
ones in our
anywhere.
society.
Yeah.
I've gone over there and hugged her twice.
Dad,
I'm just kidding. I'm
he's feeling What's that?
kidding. This joking.
Pervert.
Bad joke. No, but I am afraid
That was
afraid
great.
for the elderly and our friends, Eileen's mom, all of our parents. I am.
Well, Yvonne's dad is
Yes.
is in the nursing home with
Yes.
Parkinson's,
Yeah.
and he's had ongoing lung issues and swallowing issues now for probably 2 years. If he gets this,
Yeah.
I fear greatly for what'll happen.
Right.
But okay, so overall, on a 1 to 10, what would you say you are personally?
I'm cautious, but I'd have to put myself in a 3.
A 3?
Not even. I don't know. Am I being too? I'm not being laissez-faire. We're not
It's your
going
call.
out in public, but I'm not afraid of it.
Okay. Herb?
I'm kind of the same way. I'm like at a 2 or a 3. I mean, I know it's serious and I know people are dying and I feel bad about that. But at the same token, it's something that I know that will get figured out and
That we'll get through.
that we'll get through.
As a society.
Yeah.
Individuals may not. Yeah. I'm going to put myself at about a 4. Maybe closer to a 5. My dad had an accident on the farm today, and he's in the hospital right now with 15 rib fractures. So he's 72 years old. So if he was to acquire it now, that would not be great either. So my fear is more about those on the edges of our society that are more susceptible to having this issue. The rest of us, and I'm assuming myself to be in that group, which is maybe not a safe assumption either, but society in general will get through this just like we've gotten through the pandemics, is what I believe. Yvonne is getting CNN-itis. She's probably closer to an 8 or a 9, because if you watch CNN 24/7 like she's been doing, everything is just, the world's coming to an end. So
Yeah. That's when you desensitize, just shut it all down. Stop looking at it.
yeah,
You
we're
have to.
trying to get her to do that. It hasn't worked yet.
Yes.
There's one other thing he says in here, do not. Did you guys see it?
Well, it was more instead of.
Well, it's in verse 29 is where it's
Yeah, I see
located
it.
at, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink.
Right.
Do not worry about it. In other words, don't set your heart on material things.
Sure.
Right? So don't worry, don't be afraid, and don't set your heart on things of this world.
Yeah.
Instead, what are we called to do? What's that famous passage in this section called? What are we called to do?
Or-
Seek.
Ye first the kingdom of God.
Yes. You want to sing that song for us, Melissa?
No, God's gonna give me a voice in heaven, but not right now.
Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Okay, I'll be praying for that same voice in heaven myself.
But like right before that, provide pursuits for yourself that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven. And to me, I think that's beautiful. You think, don't do the shirt that you think is the most awesome, or whatever. It's the things that matter the most, which is heaven.
And I, having done it multiple times, to give away some stuff to somebody that's really in need,
Yeah.
I mean, feels much more valuable, right?
Right.
I mean, if it's more affirming, like a life affirming experience.
Right.
So I think I think we should look for those opportunities as we progress forward in going through this trial for the next 3 weeks or months or whatever it's going to be, right?
Yeah. He's more of the predictor than I am of how long it's going to be.
This is more of a rhetorical question here. It says, how would your life be different if you lived the way Jesus sets forth? in this passage? So again, we'll leave it as a rhetorical question for us and for you all out there to consider. How would you live your life differently, or what would it look like? What would your life look like if you were to set your life the way Jesus asks us to in this passage? That's kind of a tough question. All right, last section. Here's so we're starting, this will be verses 35 to 40, and Missy, I'll have you read it in a second. But here's the question. Are you a night owl or an early bird? Are you a night owl or an early bird?
Night owl. I don't think it's been 3 o'clock before I've gone to bed since we've been home. I just can't go to bed. I'm sorry.
What time do you wake up? 10,
I
11?
love to wake up at 10. If I'm going to bed at 3, 10 is a good time. But ask him. I don't know why.
That's funny.
Nothing's changed for me. I'm in bed by 10, up at 5.
10 to 5.
It's just awful.
What are you, Lauren? Wait, before you answer it, you guys are I don't know, let me guess is what you would be, Lauren.
Okay.
I don't think you're an early bird, Lauren. You're a go-getter. You're a driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sadly cursed with both. So I'll be up till like 2 and then wake up like 2 hours later.
And you can't go back to
And
sleep.
I can't go back to sleep. And I don't know why that is. I think my body just thinks it's a good idea to wake up really early. But
It's a horrible curse.
Mine's been weird. My life has changed. Yeah. Mine's changed when I got to college. I mean, I was an early bird and going through high school only because my dad made sure we didn't sleep in. It was time to get up and do chores and et cetera, blah, 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 right? But in college, I was terrible. I mean, we were going to bed 2, 3 o'clock every night. Walking down to the quick shop there in Lincoln and grabbing a 64-ounce Mountain Dew and then going back and playing video games, you know, and then skipping 7:30 classes because nothing was due. But since having kids have a way of correcting that behavior, I'm afraid, babies especially, and so I've become more and more of an early bird. And then with my job before teaching, when I was doing rehab director, I had to be in the office by 7:30 at the latest. So I was early, and I've been that now. If I sleep in till 7, that's something else. I'm up usually. 5:30 it's going off, and I'm up and going. So it just is what it is.
Sorry.
That's funny. Anyway, all right, Melissa, go ahead and let's read these 6 verses.
So, verse 35, watchfulness. Be dressed ready for service and keep your lamps burning, like men waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. I tell you the truth, he will dress himself to serve, will have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the 2nd or 3rd watch of the night. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come in an hour when you do not expect him.
I kind of wanted to add this last section into our discussion tonight, because there's been some discussion about whether this is the start of the end times of what we're going through. And none of us really know the answer to that question. If I were to say yes or no, my feeling is it's not any different than any other major thing that's happened in the world. But one day that's going to be true. Maybe this is it, and that's great. This asked an interesting question. So we're called here to be watchful. What's the relationship between watchfulness and what we talked about in the previous section, and worry? How are you watchful? What's watchful versus worry?
Watchful, especially in the way this is laid out, is being prepared. Watchful is because this is about the master coming home. So watchful means, looking out, being prepared, having things ready at the household. Because if he shows up tonight, his bed should be ready, or whatever the case might be on what he's expecting. So that's the way I see watchful in this conversation.
I think they'll know the signs. I think that obviously he knows his master's walk or his master's horse, whatever that is. He'll know those signs and will look for them and be ready. So that's how I equate that. But not be afraid. Oh no, he's coming. So.
I think for me, it's like somebody that's watchful. They like are prepared, so they do everything the same. Even if, say, something like coronavirus comes, they're going through their day. They're adjusting, obviously, but they're not worried about as much of like, oh my goodness, like I need to like do this, do that. They're prepared, but they're not overly like obsessed with the fact that this is going on. Doesn't mean that they can't like prepare themselves for what's happening. It just means that they're taking a different approach because they know who to rely on and what's going to happen for them. So they're not as like freaked out about what's going on.
That's good. Yeah, and I think if we apply it to society right now, watchful versus being worried, we're being watchful and we're being prepared when we say, okay, here's the things they're telling us to do. If it hits you, do this and this, isolate. So then, I know our family's had a discussion about if one of us gets sick, this is the room for you to be isolated in. And now with Megan home, if Megan's not the sick one, which is unlikely at her age, that she'll kind of be the caregiver, especially if I was sick, keep me away from Yvonne so Yvonne can get out and continue going to work to help patients. Because, I can teach these little suckers, sick as a dog, I can film myself and look horrible, but still do it online, right? So we've gotten ourselves, we're getting prepared that way and preparing to get enough of food and toilet paper and animal food and whatever else to make sure that we're ready to go. It's letting go of that worry that I think we have to latch onto. That I would encourage you all to latch onto. Because like Lauren just said, it's knowing who you rely upon in the end. Right? What do you think it means in terms of what should we be doing to be watchful in our relationship with the Master? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, I'm going to have true confession. I have probably seen 2 full seasons of The New Girl since this whole week. So how much time have I spent in the Bible versus binge watching Netflix show? I have to say, maybe I was taking.
You're the only one.
I'm the only one.
No,
but,
she's not.
But I have to really say, in my heart, we did watch Sabbath School. Hope Sabbath School this week a little bit. But in my mind, I thought I wasn't. That's not a prepared thing to just put all that aside that we normally do, study and read, and just lay on a couch, vegging and I think maybe that's a coping mechanism I had or whatever. But I do feel like that watchfulness is in what you are already doing, your worships, your prayers together, and all those things. Now I've got a whole family here. What an opportunity to. Get them.
And lots of time.
I know.
Lots of time.
To talk about God and plans and all that kind of stuff.
I have to confess too, I think, I've had this whole week now, Yvonne's been stuck at home and I'm stuck at home, and with Megan I got home Tuesday night, but I have not set aside time with my family on a consistent basis this week, and so I think that's a habit that if there's ever a good time to start a habit like that, this is the easiest time to do it. We're all stuck at home for the most part.
When I say I wanted, Lauren, dinner. I want everyone to sit around the table at dinner. And we did that a couple times this week.
There you go.
What's interesting is with all the stuff going on with coronavirus, I'm part of a command center group, and what's interesting about that is I tend to be if you get busy at work or have certain things you can get extremely focused on that, and then you start to you're on all the phone calls, you're on all the work streams, and you're on all those things, and you're reading that stuff, and you shut out at times some of the other important things in your life because you feel like you have to get that stuff right. And I've tried to be careful this week that regardless, when I get up, that first X period of time in the morning is to still read and to do that. And the hardest thing is guarding those edges, then not to let the day start to seep in.
Right.
So like for me, it's like, okay, I won't allow myself to pick up my phone or look at my computer or any of those things and let the day start in my head before I do my time with the Lord. And that's hard when things are busy around you from a work perspective.
It's habits. It is for me. I know, habits. First thing in the morning, I'm up letting the dog out and then making coffee, and that's just the way it goes, But then you make those steps, and then the next thing it's habits. I always struggle setting habits. I need, discipline and habits are the things I struggle with, so. Interesting. All right. So I think what we would say in here, there's a passage I wanted to look up that Paul kind of responded to this, and I need to Google it really quick. Dang it, I'm sorry.
Well, while you're
Go
doing
ahead.
that, Dave, the part that I really liked in here, it says the servants who are ready and waiting for his return will be rewarded. I tell you the truth, he himself will seat them upon an apron and serve them as they sit and eat. And what I love about that is it talks, the Lord is rewarding you for your relationship with him. He's rewarding you for being prepared. Not that you know that he's going to come tonight or tomorrow. It's just that that's part of just, of that's your best friend. It doesn't matter if things are going good or bad in work or things around you. You still want to have that time with that person. And in this case, it's the Lord.
Yeah, the master's coming not for you to serve him, but to serve you.
Yeah.
Right? To be in relationship
That's
with you.
beautiful.
That is beautiful. So I thought of this as I was reading these two parables about the rich man and then not to worry day to day. Paul said this in Philippians, it's chapter 4, 10 through 13. I rejoiced greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, whether living in sickness with viruses or in health.
Beautiful.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Right? I think that's a
Philippians what?
Philippians 4, 10 through 13. I love that. It
Right.
seems to tie in and wrap this lesson up. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Good. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. I know I've enjoyed getting together with you all. I'm going to go home and read this with my family now as they've been isolated.